ഹായ് ഫ്രണ്ട്സ്, ഞാനിന്ന് നിങ്ങൾക്ക് പഠിപ്പിക്കാൻ പോകുന്നത് സെം 1 BA കോംപ്ലിമെൻ്ററി കോഴ്സ് ആൻഡ് പൊളിറ്റിക്കൽ സയൻസ് യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റി ഓഫ് കേരള മോഡ്യൂൾ 4 സ്റ്റേറ്റ് ആൻഡ് ഗവൺമെൻറ്. അതിലെ ചാപ്റ്റേഴ്സ് സ്റ്റേറ്റ്, ഇറ്റ്സ് എലമെൻറ്റ്സ്, സിവിൽ സൊസൈറ്റി, ഓർഗൻസ് ഓഫ് ഗവൺമെൻറ്, ലെജിസ്ലേച്ചർ, എക്സിക്യൂട്ടീവ് ആൻഡ് ജുഡീഷ്യറി വിത്ത് എക്സാമ്പിൾസ് ഫ്രം ഇന്ത്യ, UK, USA ആൻഡ് സ്വിറ്റ്സർലാൻഡ്. ഇതിൻ്റെ എക്സാം പാറ്റേൺ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ ആൻസേഴ്സ് ആണ് ഇന്ന് ഈ വീഡിയോയിൽ കാണിക്കാൻ പോകുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ നമുക്ക് തുടങ്ങാം. ആദ്യത്തെ ചോദ്യം, ഡിസ്കസ് ദ ഫങ്ഷൻസ് പെർഫോംഡ് ബൈ മോഡേൺ ലെജിസ്ലേച്ചർ ഓർ ഡിസ്കസ് ദ ലെജിസ്ലേറ്റീവ് പ്രൊസീജിയർ ഓഫ് ഇന്ത്യൻ പാർലമെന്റ് ലോ. ഈ ചോദ്യം 15 മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. The legislature is that organ of the government which passes the laws of the government. It is the agency which has the responsibility to formulate the will of the state and vest it with legal authority and force. The functions of a legislature are: 1. Legislative or law-making functions. The first and foremost function of a legislature is to legislate, that is, to make laws. In ancient times, laws used to be either derived from customs, traditions, and religious scriptures, or were issued by the kings as their commands. However, in the contemporary era of democracy, legislature is the chief source of law. It is legislature which formulates the will of the state into laws and gives it a legal character. Legislature transforms the demands of the people into authoritative laws or statutes. 2. Deliberative functions. To deliberate upon matters of national importance, public issues, problems, and needs is an important function of a modern legislature. Though this function, the legislature reflects the public opinion over various issues. The debates held in the legislature have a great educative value for the people. 2. Custodian of national finances. A near universal rule is that the legislature of the state is the custodian of a national purse. It holds the purse for the nation and controls the finances. No money can be raised or spent by the executive without the approval of the legislature. Each year, the executive has to prepare and get passed from the legislature the budget for the coming financial year. 4. Control over the executive. A modern legislature has the power to exercise control over the executive. A. In a parliamentary system of government, like the one which is at work in India, for all its actions, decisions, and policies, the executive is collectively responsible before the legislature. It is accountable before the legislature. The legislature has the power to remove the executive by passing a vote of no confidence or by rejecting a policy or budget or law of the executive. The Prime Minister and all other ministers are essentially the members of the legislature. They are bound by the rules and procedures of the parliament. B. In a presidential form of government, like the one which is at work in the USA, the legislature exercises some checks over the executive. It can appoint investigation committees to probe the functioning of government departments. By the use of its power to legislate and pass the budget, the legislature exercises a fair amount of control over the executive. Thus, whether a political system has a parliamentary system or a presidential system, the legislature exercises a control over the executive. 5. Constituent functions. In almost every state, It is the legislature which has the power to amend the constitution. For this purpose, legislature has to pass special laws called amendments in accordance with the procedure laid down in the constitution. In some states, the requirement is that the legislature must pass the amendment with two-thirds or three-fourths or an absolute majority of votes. 6. Electoral functions. A legislature usually performs some electoral functions. The two houses of the Indian Parliament elect the vice president. All elected MPs and MLAs form the Electoral College which elects the President of India. In Switzerland, the federal legislature elects the members of the Federal Council or Executive and the Federal Tribunal or Judiciary. 7. Judicial functions. It is customary to give some judicial power to the legislature. Usually, the legislature is assigned to act as a court of impeachment, that is, as an investigating court for trying high public officials on charge of treason, misdemeanor, and high crimes and remove them from office. In India, the Union Parliament can preach the President. It has also the power to pass a resolution for the removal of judge of the Supreme Court and of the High Courts on the ground of misbehavior or incapacity. 8. Ventilation of grievances. A legislature acts as the highest forum for ventilation of public grievances against the executive. Beside representing every interest and shade of opinion, the legislature acts as the national forum for expressing public opinion, public grievances, and public aspirations. Parliamentary debates and discussions throw a floodlight over various issues of public importance. 9. Miscellaneous functions. Some legislatures are assigned specific executive tasks. For example, the US Senate or upper house of US legislature has the power to confirm or reject the major appointments made by the US president. Likewise, it enjoys the power to ratify or reject treaties made by the US President. Thus, the legislative organs of the government plays a very important and active role in the exercise of the sovereign power of the state. In fact, the legislature is the legal sovereign in the state. It has the power to transform any decision of the state into a law. Legislature is the chief source of law. It is the mirror of national public opinion and the symbol of the power of the people. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം എക്സ്പ്ലെയിൻ ദ ഡിഫറെൻറ്റ് ടൈപ്സ് ഓഫ് എക്സിക്യൂട്ടീവ്സ് ഇൻ മോഡേൺ ഡെമോക്രാറ്റിക് സ്റ്റേറ്റ്. ഈ ചോദ്യം 15 മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. ഓരോ ടൈപ്സ് ഓഫ് എക്സിക്യൂട്ടീവ്സും 4 മാർക്കിനോ 2 മാർക്കിനോ ചോദിക്കാം. അതായത് വാട്ട് ആർ നോമിനൽ ആൻഡ് റിയൽ എക്സിക്യൂട്ടീവ്സ്, അതിൽ തന്നെ നോമിനൽ എക്സിക്യൂട്ടീവ്സ് എന്താണെന്ന് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ റിയൽ എക്സിക്യൂട്ടീവ്സ് എന്താണെന്ന് 2 മാർക്കിനോ 1 മാർക്കിനോ ചോദിക്കാം. Different types of executives are: 1. Nominal or titular and real executives. The difference between the nominal or titular and real executives is made only in a parliamentary system of government. In it, the head of state, the president or the monarch, is the nominal executive, and the council of ministers, headed by the prime minister, is the real executive. All the powers are legally the powers of the nominal executive, but in practice, these are exercised by the real executive. The nominal executive is not responsible for its actions as these are performed in its name by the real executive. The real executive is responsible for all the actions of the nominal executive. The nominal executive is the ceremonial and dignified part of the executive, whereas the real executive is its powerful part. 2. Hereditary and elected executives. When the executive assumes office by the law of hereditary succession, it is called the hereditary executive. When the executive is directly or indirectly elected by the people for a fixed period or even for life, it is called the elected executive. In Britain, Japan, and Malaysia, there are hereditary chief executives. In India, USA, Germany, and many other states, there are elected chief executives. 3. Single and plural executives. When all the executive powers are in the hands of a single functionary or leader, it is called a single executive. In India, Britain, USA, Australia, France, and many other states, there are single executives. In India, all the executive powers are with the President of India. Likewise, under the US Constitution, the executive powers are with the President of United States of America. When the executive powers are vested with a group of persons or in a committee or council or commission, and these are collectively exercised by all the members of this commission or council, the executive is called the plural executive. As for example, in Switzerland, all the executive powers have been given to the Federal Council, which consists of 7 members. All the members collectively exercise all the executive powers. 4. Parliamentary and presidential executive. The distinction between the parliamentary and presidential executives is made on the basis of the relationship between the legislature and executive. In parliamentary executive, there is a close relationship between legislature and executive, and members of the executive are also the members of the legislature. B. The members of political executive is individually and collectively responsible before the legislature. C. The tender of the political executive is not fixed as it can be at any time removed by the legislature. And D. The legislative can be dissolved by the executive. In a presidential executive, there is a separation of power between the executive and the legislature. B. The membership of the two organs is incompatible, that is, member of one cannot be a member of the other. C. The executive is not responsible to the legislature. And D. Neither can dissolve nor remove the other. The parliamentary executives are functioning in India, UK, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and several other states. In the United States of America, the executive is presidential. In France, there is a mixture of these two forms of executive. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം ഡിഫൈൻ സ്റ്റേറ്റ് വാട്ട് ആർ ദ എലമെന്റ്സ് ഓഫ് സ്റ്റേറ്റ്. ഈ ചോദ്യം 15 മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. ഇതിൽ 2 എലമെന്റ് ആയിട്ട് 4 മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു എലമെന്റ് ആയിട്ട് 1 മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. സ്റ്റേറ്റ് ഈസ് ദ സെൻട്രൽ ഫോക്കസ് ഓഫ് political science. It plays an important role in the society. It is the most powerful and universal social organization. It is a rare and incomparable organization. It is a political organization. State has four constituent elements. 1. Population. We cannot imagine a state without a population. It is the people who make the state. Without them, these can be none. But the population must be large enough to make a state and sustain it. The member of one single family does not make a state. However, no limit is placed on the number of people making a state, but the population must be sufficient to maintain a state organization. It should not be more than the resources of the state which are capable of supporting. 2. Territory. Like without population, we cannot think of a state without a territory. A state can exercise its authority over well defined territory. Fixed territory is necessary for legal purpose. Land, water, air space within the defined territorial area constitute the territory of the state. It covers the geographical limits of the state, its rivers and lakes, the natural resources it has, and the air space above. The principles of representation and federalism are most suitable for bigger states. 3. Government. Government is that agency which steers the ship of the state. Without government, state will be directionless. Here, the form of the government does not matter. It could be presidential system, one party rule, or even dictatorship. There has to be a government. In other words, government is nothing but the implementing arm of the state. Government is that system through which state expresses its will. The government makes law, punishes law breakers, and promotes welfare of the people. 4. Sovereignty. Scholars believe that the sovereignty is the soul of state. Before 15th August 1947, India had territory, population, and government, but it did not have sovereignty. It shows the importance of sovereignty. It has two aspects, one internal and second external. In internal sovereignty, the state has ultimate unlimited power within its territory. It enjoys final control over all people, associations, and other things. Under external sovereignty, it means a state is free from external control. It can enter into international treaties. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം Civil society plays a critical role in good governance. Illustrate or examine the major challenges before civil society which reduce their functions in catering to the interests of people. ഈ ചോദ്യം 15 മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. Civil society plays an important role in building and maintaining democracy. Civil society movements can significantly influence government policies as well as social attitude. It must perform same roles or to maintain and strengthen democracy. They are 1. To empower citizens. Civil society empowers citizens about their rights and duties and its necessity. It also encourages the traditionally excluded groups such as women, Dalits, and minorities to utilize their rights and get access to power. 2. To keep state power in check. Civil society checks the political abuse and violation of law. An empowered civil society will be able to hold the state accountable in case of abuse political power. 3. To reduce political conflicts. All established civil society reduces the differences in, say, political conflict in democratic institutions and helps ensure that the best interests of people are included. 4. It promotes democratic values among citizens. 5. It promotes opportunities for political parties and other organizations to represent their interests. 6. It supports political and economic reforms. 7. It trains new political leaders. It helps identify and train new political leaders to revitalize their government. 8. It is a watchdog against the violation of human rights of an agitation on behalf of aggrieved citizens. 9. It is a service provided to areas and people not reached by official efforts or as a government's agent. 10. It is a mobilizer of public opinion for against a program or a policy. Some of the significant achievements of civil society include Right to Information Act, Consumer Protection Act, Citizen Charter, e-governance, democratic decentralization, public interest legislation, etc. Thus, civil society plays a very significant role in modern democracies. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം വാട്ട് ആർ ദ ക്യാരക്ടറിസ്റ്റിക്സ് ഓഫ് സിവിൽ സൊസൈറ്റി? ഈ ചോദ്യം 4 മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. ദ ക്യാരക്ടറിസ്റ്റിക്സ് ഓഫ് സിവിൽ സൊസൈറ്റി ആർ A. Associations. Civil society is advances when citizens can openly and voluntarily participate in diverse social affiliations, groups and voluntarily participate in diverse social affiliations, groups, networks and structures for self-governance and social transformation. B. Trusteeship. Civil society is advanced when citizens hold decision-making power, work to strengthen and improve local and regional economies and exercise sustainable and social transparent stewardship of societal resources, example, human, social, material and ecological on behalf of common good. C. Sovereignty. Civil society is advanced when citizens have the right to be involved in all aspects of political governance and the authority to make decisions and perform actions affecting all the levels of public life without the institutions of public life being captured by the interests of specific groups or individuals. D. Accountability. Civil society is advanced when citizens acting through community based groups and associations are able to use basic civics freedom and rights to hold economic and political actors responsible for the outcomes of policies, programs, and patterns of resources distribution and the exercise of political power. Equity. Civil society is advanced when citizens pursue social justice by 1. Constantly and compassionately using the rule of law in fulfillment of their civic obligations, and 2. Advocating for those excluded from the political process and harmed by unjust laws. F. Reciprocity. Civil society is advanced when citizens 1. Pursue social transformation through reciprocal, 2. Negotiate, mediate, and resolve conflict through peaceful, non-violent means. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം explain the functions of a judiciary and its importance or discuss the different debates on judicial activism. ഈ ചോദ്യം 4 മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. Functions of judiciary and its importance. 1. To give justice to the people. The first and foremost function of the judiciary is to give justice to the people whenever they may approach it. 2. Interpretation and application of laws. One of the major functions of the judiciary is to interpret and apply laws to specific cases. The course of deciding the disputes that come before it, the judges interpret and apply laws. 3. Role of lawmaking. The judiciary also plays a role in lawmaking. The decisions given by the courts really determine the meaning, nature, and scope of the laws passed by the legislature. For equity legislation. Where a law is silent and ambiguous or appears to be inconsistent with some other law of the land, the judge depends upon their sense of justice, fairness, impartiality, honesty, and wisdom for deciding the cases. 5. Protection of rights. The judiciary has the supreme responsibility to safeguard the rights of the people. 6. Guardian of the Constitution. The judiciary acts as a guardian of the Constitution. 7. Power to get its decisions and judgments enforced. The judiciary has the power not only to deliver judgments and decide disputes, but also to get these enforced. 8. Special role in a federation. In a federal system, the judiciary has to perform an additionally important role as the guardian of the constitution and the arbiter of disputes between the center and states. 9. Running of the judicial administration. The judiciary is not a department of the government. It is independent of both the legislature and the executive. It is a separate and independent organ with its own organization and officials. 10. Adversary functions. Very often, the courts are given the responsibility to give adversary opinions to the rulers on any legal matters. 11. To conduct judicial inquiries, judges are very often called upon to head equity commissions constituted to inquire into some serious incidents resulting from the alleged errors or omissions on the part of government or some public servants. 12. Miscellaneous functions. Beside the above major functions, the judiciary also performs several other functions. Some such functions are the appointment of certain local officials of the court, choosing of clerical and other employees. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം വാട്ട് ആർ ദ ഓർഗൻസ് ഓഫ് ഗവൺമെന്റ്? ഈ ചോദ്യം 4 മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. There are three organs of government. 1. Legislature. The legislature is that organ of the government which passes the laws of the government. It is the agency which has the responsibility to formulate the will of the state and vest it with legal authority and force. 2. Executive. It is that organ which implements the laws passed by the legislature and the policy of the government. In modern times, the executive is designed in its broader form and it covers both the political executive as well as the civil service. 3. Judiciary. The judiciary is the third organ of the government. It has the responsibility to apply the laws to specific cases and settle all disputes. The real meaning of law is what the judges decide during the course of giving the judgments in various cases. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം ഡിസ്കസ് ദ ഫങ്ഷൻസ് ഓഫ് എക്സിക്യൂട്ടീവ്. ഈ ചോദ്യം 2 മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. ഫങ്ഷൻസ് ഓഫ് എക്സിക്യൂട്ടീവ്സ് ആർ എ. എൻഫോഴ്സ്മെന്റ് ഓഫ് ലോസ്. ബി. അപ്പോയിന്റ്മെന്റ് മേക്കിംഗ് ഫങ്ഷൻസ്. സി. ട്രീറ്റി മേക്കിംഗ് ഫങ്ഷൻസ്. ഡി. ഡിഫൻസ്, വാർ ആൻഡ് പീസ് ഫങ്ഷൻസ്. E. Foreign policy making and the conduct of foreign relations. F. Policy making. G. Functions relating to law making. H. Law making under the system of delegated legislation. I. Financial functions. J. Some semi-judicial functions. And K. Grant of titles and honors. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം വാട്ട് ആർ ദ ടൈപ്സ് ഓഫ് ലെജിസ്ലേച്ചർ? ഈ ചോദ്യം 2 മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. A modern legislature is either bicameral or unicameral. Bicameralism means a legislature with two houses or chambers, while unicameralism means a legislature with a single house or chamber. A large number of modern legislatures, particularly of big states, are bicameral, that is, legislature with two houses. However, several states, mostly the small states and provinces of a federal system, have unicameral legislatures, that is, legislatures with single houses. At the Chodhyam, why is securing the independence of the judiciary significant or independence of judiciary? ഈ ചോദ്യം 2 മാർക്കിനോ 1 മാർക്കിനോ ചോദിക്കാം. In the life of the citizens of a state, judiciary is a source of confidence and fearlessness. The common man depends upon a judiciary for getting justice. Without a security of rights and freedom guaranteed by the judiciary, they cannot really hope to carry out their jobs and enjoy their living. They are more dependent upon the judiciary than the legislature and the executive. Without judicial protection, their lives can become miserable. From citizens' point of view, judiciary is the most important organ of the government. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം ഡിസ്കസ് ഓർ ഡിഫൈൻ ജുഡീഷ്യൽ റിവ്യൂ. ഈ ചോദ്യം 2 മാർക്കിനോ 1 മാർക്കിനോ ചോദിക്കാം. The important function of the court, particularly Supreme Court and High Court, to look into the constitutional validity of a legislative measure or execute action and then deliver it null and void to the extent of its being against the fundamental law of the land. It is known as the power of judiciary review. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം വാട്ട് ഈസ് സിവിൽ സൊസൈറ്റി? ഈ ചോദ്യം 2 മാർക്കിനോ 1 മാർക്കിനോ ചോദിക്കാം. സിവിൽ സൊസൈറ്റി ഈസ് ദ അഗ്രിഗേറ്റ് ഓഫ് നോൺ ഗവൺമെന്റൽ ഓർഗനൈസേഷൻസ് ആൻഡ് ഇൻസ്റ്റിറ്റ്യൂഷൻസ് ദാറ്റ് മാനിഫെസ്റ്റ് ഇൻട്രസ്റ്റ് ആൻഡ് വിൽ ഓഫ് സിറ്റിസൻസ്. Civil society used to be defined as a political community, that is, a society governed by the government, law, and authority. Civil society refers to a realm of associations, business, interest groups, classes, families, and so on. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം US Senate is the most powerful second chamber in the world. Why? ഈ ചോദ്യം 4 മാർക്കിനോ 2 മാർക്കിനോ ചോദിക്കാം. 1. In legislative field, in America, ordinary bill can be introduced first in any house. However, it can be sent for the signature of the president only after the passage of the bill by both the houses. 2. In financial field, money bill is first introduced in the lower house, but the Senate can make changes in the money bill except the change of the title. 3. In executive field, in America, Senate is a partner in the exercise of executive powers of the president. 4. In the judicial field, the judicial powers of American decide the disputes regarding the elections and qualifications of its members and debar any elected member from assuming his seat in the House. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം റൈറ്റ് എ ഷോർട്ട് നോട്ട് ഓൺ ദ പവർ ആൻഡ് പൊസിഷൻ ഓഫ് ദ പ്രൈം മിനിസ്റ്റർ ഇൻ ഇന്ത്യ. ഈ ചോദ്യം 4 മാർക്കിനോ 2 മാർക്കിനോ ചോദിക്കാം. എ. Formation of the Council of Ministers. President appoints all other ministers on the advice of the Prime Minister. B. Allocation of portfolios. It is an undisputed privilege of the Prime Minister to allocate portfolios to his ministers. C. Change of portfolios. The Prime Minister has the power to change the departments or portfolios of the ministers at any time. D. Chairman of the Cabinet. The Prime Minister is the leader of the Cabinet. E. Removal of ministers. The Prime Minister can demand the resignation from any minister at any time. If the Prime Minister cannot become a dictator, undoubtedly the Prime Minister of India enjoys a very strong position, yet he can neither be a dictator nor even behave like a dictator. G. Leader of the Parliament. The Prime Minister is also the leader of the Parliament. H. Power to get the Parliament dissolved. The Prime Minister has the power to advise the President in favor of a dissolution of the Lok Sabha. I. Role as the leader of the nation. Besides being the leader of his party and Lok Sabha, Prime Minister is also the leader of the nation. General elections are fought in his name. And J. Role of Prime Minister during an emergency. The President declares an emergency only under the advice of the Cabinet, which in reality means the advice of the Prime Minister. At the ചോദ്യം explain the silent features of the British Constitution or explain the features of a British Constitution. ഈ ചോദ്യം 2 മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. A. British Constitution is unwritten. B. The British Constitution keeps evolving with time. C. British Constitution is flexible. D. British Constitution has a unitary character. E. British Constitution promotes a parliamentary executive. And F. British Constitution promotes a sovereign parliament. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം വാട്ട് ഡു യു മീൻ ബൈ പോപ്പുലർ സോവറിനിറ്റി? ഈ ചോദ്യം 2 മാർക്കിനോ 1 മാർക്കിനോ ചോദിക്കാം. Popular sovereignty is the principle that the authority of a state and its government are created and sustained by the consent of its people, who are the source of all political power. Popular sovereignty, being a principle, does not imply any particular political implementation. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം സ്റ്റേറ്റ് ഈസ് എ നെസസറി ഈവൽ കമൻഡ്. ഈ ചോദ്യം 2 മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. ഇറ്റ് വയലേറ്റ്സ് പീപ്പിൾസ് റൈറ്റ് ടു പേഴ്സണൽ ഫ്രീഡം, മേക്കിംഗ് ഇറ്റ് ഈവൽ. The state is also seen as essential due to human nature's tendency towards egoism and selfishness. It is essential to put an end to people's antisocial behavior in society. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം യൂണിവേഴ്സൽ അഡൽട്ട് സഫറേജ്. ഈ ചോദ്യം 1 മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. All adults of sound mind are allowed to vote after completing a defined age limit. In case of India, it is 18 years. Through the provision of universal adult suffrage or universal adult franchise. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം illustrate the theory of separation of powers or briefly explain the theory of separation of powers. ഈ ചോദ്യം 2 മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. The intent of separation of powers is to prevent the concentration of unchecked power and to provide for checks and balances in which the powers of one branch of government is limited by the powers of another branch, to prevent abuses of power and avoid autocracy. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം വാട്ട് ആർ ദ പവേഴ്സ് ആൻഡ് ഫങ്ഷൻസ് ഓഫ് സുപ്രീം കോർട്ട്? ഈ ചോദ്യം 2 മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. ഇറ്റ് ഈസ് എ ഗ്യാരണ്ടർ ആൻഡ് ഗാർഡിയൻ ഓഫ് ഫണ്ടമെന്റൽ റൈറ്റ്സ് ആൻഡ് എക്സസൈസസ് ദ power of judicial review to check the actions of legislative and administrative authority. It has the power of giving an advisory opinion to the president in certain matters. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം പോയിന്റ് എനി ടു ആർഗ്യുമെന്റ്സ് ഇൻ ഫേവർ ഓഫ് യൂണികാർമലിസം. ഈ ചോദ്യം 2 മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. എ. യൂണിഫോമിറ്റി ഇൻ ലെജിസ്ലേച്ചർ. ബി. സേവിംഗ് ഓഫ് ടൈം ആൻഡ് മണി. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം വാട്ട് ഡസ് ഇൻഡിപെൻഡന്റ് ജുഡീഷ്യറി മീൻ? ഈ ചോദ്യം 1 മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. The ability of courts and judges to perform their duties free of influence or control by other actors, whether governmental or private. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം നെഗറ്റീവ് ലിബർട്ടി. ഈ ചോദ്യം 1 മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. നെഗറ്റീവ് ലിബർട്ടി ഈസ് ഫ്രീഡം ഫ്രം interference by other people. Negative liberty is primarily concerned with freedom from external constraint and contrasts with positive liberty. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം റൂൾ ഓഫ് ലോ. ഈ ചോദ്യം ഒരു മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. The rule of law is the political philosophy that all citizens and institutions within a country, state, or community are accountable to the same laws, including lawmakers and leaders. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം ഇൻട്രസ്റ്റ് അഗ്രിഗേഷൻ. ഈ ചോദ്യം ഒരു മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. Interest aggregation is the activity in which the political demands of groups and individuals are combined into policy programs. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം ഫെഡറലിസം ഇൻ ഇന്ത്യ. ഈ ചോദ്യം ഒരു മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. Federalism is a part of the basic structure of the Indian Constitution which cannot be altered or destroyed through constitutional amendments under the constituent powers of the Parliament without undergoing judicial review by the Supreme Court. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം ദ ഇന്ത്യൻ പ്രസിഡന്റ് ഷാൽ ബി എലക്ടഡ് ബൈ വിച്ച് മെമ്പേഴ്സ്. ഈ ചോദ്യം ഒരു മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. Members of both the House of Parliament and elected members of legislative assemblies of Indian state and the union territories. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം ക്രിമിനൽ ലോ. ഈ ചോദ്യം ഒരു മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. Criminal law is the body of law that relates to crime. It prescribes conduct perceived as threatening, harmful, or otherwise endangering to the property, health, safety, and moral welfare of people, inclusive of one's self. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം ഫ്ലെക്സിബിൾ കോൺസ്റ്റിറ്റ്യൂഷൻ. ഈ ചോദ്യം ഒരു മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. Flexible constitution is a constitution that may be amended by the ordinary process of legislation and is therefore relatively easy to amend. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം ഗ്രോസ് ജനറലൈസേഷൻ. ഈ ചോദ്യം ഒരു മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. When someone assumes something without researching all the facts, they often end up with a wrong impression or belief. For example, if a person says all girls like to wear pink frilly dresses, that would be a gross generalization. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം പാർലമെന്ററി സോവറിനിറ്റി. ഈ ചോദ്യം ഒരു മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. പാർലമെന്ററി സോവറിനിറ്റി മീൻസ് ദാറ്റ് പാർലമെന്റ് ഈസ് superior to the executive and judicial branches of government and can therefore enact or repeal any law it chooses. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം പ്രൈവറ്റ് ബിൽ. ഈ ചോദ്യം ഒരു മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. പ്രൈവറ്റ് ബിൽ ഈസ് എ ലെജിസ്ലേറ്റീവ് ബിൽ affecting the interests only of a particular body or individual. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം ദ നെയിം ഓഫ് ദ ലെജിസ്ലേച്ചർ ഇൻ USA. ഈ ചോദ്യം ഒരു മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. US സെനറ്റ്. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം ഹു റെപ്രസെന്റ്സ് ദ എക്സിക്യൂട്ടീവ് ഇൻ ഇന്ത്യൻ കോൺസ്റ്റിറ്റ്യൂഷൻ. ഈ ചോദ്യം ഒരു മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. പ്രസിഡന്റ്. അടുത്ത ചോദ്യം ഇൻ ദ വേൾഡ് വേർ ഡ്യുവൽ സിറ്റിസൺഷിപ്പ് എക്സിസ്റ്റ്. ഈ ചോദ്യം ഒരു മാർക്കിന് ചോദിക്കാം. കാനഡ, ഫ്രാൻസ്, ജർമ്മനി, ഈജിപ്ത്, പാകിസ്ഥാൻ, എക്സെട്ര. Wish you all the best. Thank you for watching the video. Please subscribe, like, comment and share the video if you liked it.